Chapter 12 deals with public relations crisis management. The best situation would be no crisis, but stuff happens. The key is to plan beforehand by looking at the history of the industry to anticipate future crises. The news cycle is 24/7, so the public relations response must be very rapid, which requires advanced planning. The NIMUS acronym means that the public relations message will go to people who were not the intended recipients. When dealing with the news media during a crisis, tell the truth and try to be cooperative. Never say no comment or go hide in your office. At least give the reporters some facts. If you can't tell them everything, tell them why. Explain why you cannot comment. The NIMUS acronym means that the public relations message will be received by people other than the target audience. So don't offend anyone, and be careful of slang or expressions that might mean something else in a different culture. For example, the chairman of the board for BP offended Americans when he said that the company would help the little people. The American expression would be the little guys. So he would have done much better to have used more formal language such as small business owners. Part of the planning process is to collect information before a crisis occurs. Gather basic information such as the phone numbers for the different divisions of the organization. Write basic descriptions of all the buildings and all the divisions and make copies of the floor plans. Get headshots of all the key personnel and write a brief biography for them. Tabulate basic information such as the number of people who work in each location. Boilerplate refers to a pre-written description of the company that is used whenever it is needed in a routine document. Also collect the names and phone numbers for officials who would be involved in a crisis, such as the police and fire chiefs, the mayor, etc. Create a password-protected website for internal communications during a crisis. Write the crisis plan ahead of time and post it on the website so that key employees can refer to it during the crisis. Teach the key personnel how to access the website and familiarize them with what is posted there. Also, pre-select crisis teams with expertise for various disaster scenarios. Drill into everyone the idea that all media responses must go through public relations so that there is a consistent message. Every employee, from the CEO down to the janitor, must be impressed with the importance of referring all questions to public relations. Someone in public relations should be designated as the initial spokesperson for the organization during a crisis. Then as the situation develops, the spokesperson should shift to a corporate officer who is best suited to deal with that particular situation. However, managers are not used to dealing with the public, so public relations personnel must thoroughly coach them before they speak to the press. The higher the rank of the spokesperson, the more credible the response. However, someone they know will be more credible to the employees, such as their department or division managers. The spokesperson should always be someone within the organization. Outside spokespeople lack credibility with the public. Crisis management is the most stressful situation for public relations for a number of reasons. First, the initial information will be hard to discover, confused, and often wrong. Just announce facts that are absolutely certain, because the release of early incorrect information will undermine the credibility later on. It will be hard to account for all the employees and customers injured in the disaster, so don't even try. Just speak in general terms and use positive news such as the number of employees that the company can account for. And it will be difficult to pinpoint the cause of the accident. After all, if you'd known ahead of time, you would have prevented the disaster in the first place. But people want correct information right away, and you won't be able to satisfy them, so don't even try. Only release information that you are certain of. Emotions will run high whenever people are injured or killed in an accident. Express sympathy and try to help the victims and their families, but don't talk about the victims. Too often it appears that the company is blaming the victims for the disaster, so it is better to say nothing. Also, tensions will be high on the crisis team. It sounds simple, but it's important to have a quiet room with cots for people to sleep and perhaps some medical personnel to monitor health issues like high blood pressure. The most important part of public relations response to a crisis is to appear credible, and it will be more difficult than usual because the public will be very skeptical of information coming from the company. The grapevine is faster than official communications, and social media has only made it faster still. So it is more important than ever to establish a means of communicating with the family and friends of the employees or customers that were affected by the disaster. Companies often establish a phone number for families and friends and a public gathering spot. It is a delicate situation, but the press must be kept away from the family and friends of the victims, which is another reason to keep the press informed so they won't feel a need to go bug the people who are still in shock. Cooperate with government officials, because in many ways they are the best friends for public relations. The public is much more likely to believe what they say. The public will never completely trust spokespersons for the company because there is an obvious conflict of interest. The news media coverage largely determines how the public will react to a crisis, so try to keep the media informed in a timely fashion and above all, work to earn the trust of the reporters. If the public doesn't have real facts, they will make them up. So the best way to prevent rumors is to provide factual information to the news media as often as the general rule for spokespersons is to immediately take responsibility for the disaster and to show sympathy for the victims. Don't just mouth empty words. Do things that help the victims. At the very least, provide special lines of communications for families and friends of victims, including hotlines and spaces for them to gather and wait. And always inform them of the news before the reporters. They should never hear bad news about family and friends through the media. The most important thing is for crisis managers to concentrate on doing something to minimize the injuries caused by the disaster. Actions speak louder than words, and the best public relations message is when the media reports on proactive actions by the company. The public will always distrust company spokespersons, so the best messages are delivered by government officials or independent experts. Always remember that the reporters are just trying to do their jobs, so help them out. Provide factual information as soon as possible, even if the information makes the company look bad. In the long run, the truth will get out, so it's better for the company to release it now than for the reporters to find it out later. Don't play lawyer. Just assume that lawsuits follow disasters, but the truth will get out anyway. Always be candid during a crisis because it enhances one's credibility, which is essential during a lawsuit as well. But always avoid opinions and speculation. Just stick to the facts. Also remember that the internet is just as important as traditional media sources. Use social media to spread the message, but always make certain that the message is factual. The temptation is to release data quickly before it can be verified, but often it is wrong and that undermines your credibility. The first day after the crisis is the most critical for public relations. The public opinion will be formed during that 24 hours, and then it will take months or years to change that opinion. Sometimes a crisis sneaks up on companies. Something completely unexpected will cause a public relations disaster. For example, perhaps the employees for an overseas supplier go on strike, and the media reports that your company buys goods from a sweatshop factory. Or a rumor starts on the internet that the leather in your products comes from dog hides. So the public relations department must constantly monitor the internet to detect problems early. Often the difficulty will be convincing the top management that they should respond to the growing crisis. Their tendency will be to wait for better information. Also focus on the impact of the crisis on the public, not on the news reporters. Some reporters see a crisis as a sport in which they try to score more news flashes than their competitors. But the focus of public relations must be on the opinions of the public. And another crucial responsibility for public relations is to prepare top management to deal with the reporters. The most important rules are to never complain about others and to always promote a positive message about what the company is doing to deal with the disaster. As soon as a crisis develops, the crisis team should meet and the public relations should be in attendance. Take careful notes about what the company is doing to deal with the problem, but always clear news releases with managers and attorneys. Always remember that the crisis is about people, not about public relations. Stay out of the way of the managers who are actually doing something to solve the issue. The job of public relations is to communicate, and you should pay special attention to the friends and families of victims. Above all else, wait to verify information before you release it, and only release facts, not opinions. Managers and employees need to focus on the crisis rather than deal with the press. So your job is to keep the press out of their way. All employees should be taught to refer all media inquiries to the public relations staff, who is best suited to deal with them. Emotions will run high, and news reporters will be under pressure to write articles as soon as possible. So public relations staff must keep their temper because reporters are only trying to take care of business. Respond only with solid facts and use facts to correct any false reports. Treat victims, their families, and friends with dignity and respect. Never criticize them. Express regret for the disaster and highlight actions by the company to remedy the situation. Cooperate with public officials, partly because they are the best sources of credible information for the public. It is better to have the facts reported, even if the facts make the company look bad, because worse rumors will grow in the absence of facts. Work with the news reporters. They are your best channel to get the message out to the public. Reporters are frenemies of public relations staff because the reporters look for villains and someone to blame for the disaster. But it's not personal, it's just business. Always be patient and courteous with the press. The months and years after the disaster will involve a public relations campaign to change the public opinion of the disaster. First, management must pinpoint the actual cause of the disaster and do something to prevent a reoccurrence. Public relations should evaluate how the company executed the crisis plan and then revise it for future crises. Also look at how the employees acted during the crisis and improve the training and preparation. Hopefully top management will look back at the crisis and say that this was the public relations department's finest hour.